These are the steps, and I call the video How to Be a Great Student. Okay. So step one in my class, I assign reading, you read and you take notes. And I took a little snippet of what you guys wrote. There's abbreviations, and sometimes abbreviations are because I don't have enough room to have all this on one thing. No reason to write any of this down because you have the video, okay, and you've got these images, and so you can always see this at a later date. Okay, so scientific method. You guys read about it. It was a bold word. If you're not writing the bold words and the definitions, start doing it. And then it was a way to answer things about the world around us. It's a scientific way of process of whatever the thing was, okay? There are steps to the scientific method. Number one, you wrote down observe, and that was all there was in the book. So you wrote down observe. Number two, question. There was some blah, 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 but it didn't seem all that important. You wrote down that. And so on and so forth, okay? So these are what you possess, what you take into the reading quiz, and then you're like, oh, what are the steps to the scientific? What's the first step of the scientific method? You literally open your notes, you go, during the quiz, and you're like, oh, step one, this is observe. Okay, boy, these are easy quizzes. As long as you're good taking notes. So this quiz is designed to make sure you take good notes. Step two, I don't expect you to understand the finer points of a hypothesis or maybe what we mean when we say observe. So that's what we talk about in class. And when we're live, we're going to try to do activities that exemplify these things, but we're limited with Zoom. Class notes, you have your reading notes open. You are sitting there with those right next to you. And in fact, if you want, you should have, I think I already said this in class. Let's just say this is your notebook, and here are your class notes. I realize these are typed, and I'm telling you, writing them is better for you, okay? And you have all of your notes, and you don't write on the back of pages. Now, here's your reading notes. Put your class notes here. If I tell you something about step one of formation of fossils, okay, then you don't squeeze it in here, right over here. Draw a little line and say that fits in there, okay? Now, I drew them here. I wrote down here, and I tried to give you the sense of what we did in class. Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Love the hair.
Thank you.
Okay, number one, observation. Now, here's where I went into some detail. You don't have to write observation if you are doing your class notes this way, because you've got observation here and you're writing over here and you're drawing an arrow where it belongs. If you want to write in here, you can write in here. To use a different color pen or pencil so that you know my red is always my class notes. And then we talked about senses, blah, blah, blah. Measurement tools, graduated cylinders, balances, research. That's also a way that you do observations. You observe other people's research. Number two, question. The question sets up the hypothesis. I don't think I said that in the reading notes, so you're like, oh, so if I say a good question, I say it the right way, it kind of tells me how to write the hypothesis. I wonder if I add soap, will more water stick to a penny or less water? That's a great question. So my hypothesis is, if soap is added to water, then less drops will stick to the penny. Oh my gosh, that's a hypothesis. So it sets you up. That's what I'm doing that in class, and we did that fictitious lab, and then we did the actual. All right, so now that you have the class notes, you understand a little bit more of what I expand on, like you guys read about metabolism last night, and anabolism, and catabolism, and trust me, you don't get it. I'm gonna explain it today. Okay, my expectation is you can do bold words, you can get basic concepts, and then I help to tweak it so that when I'm talking about it, you're like, yeah, I read about it. I have some knowledge of it, but I really don't know what the heck's going on. I'm building on your little bit of reading ability. All right, number three, step three, I gave you the assignment to marry your notes. And that means take some of the reading notes and the class notes and get them in one location. Now, I had you guys do it. I looked at it this weekend. And I think maybe one of you did a good job at actually sticking in the stuff from class right in the place where it belonged. The more often people just kind of added class notes at the end. That's not the idea. That doesn't help you. Okay? You don't want information about the same thing in two locations. Your brain won't store it as easily. So you look over here, I purposely color-coded reading notes in blue and class notes in red so you could see here came from reading notes, okay, in blue. And when we look at that, we see, okay, now I abbreviated. Now you're supposed to be thinking a little, okay? You don't just simply have to write exactly what I write. In fact, I don't want you to. I want you to realize, you know what, at this point, Nooms, I've been doing this whole science thing for like 4 years. And I'm so used to this scientific method. SciMet is easy for me, and it saves me some time. So if SciMet is a great abbreviation for you, then by all means, write SciMet. But if it doesn't, you wouldn't write that. Now, we had this big fancy thing. And after talking about it in class, and I drove home the point when we did that about let's get away from my words and use your words. And you're like, yeah, what do I do? How to do science. That's fantastic. If I ask you on a quiz, a worksheet, or a test, what is the scientific method? And you don't say what I wrote in the book, but you rather say, well, you basically mean it's how you answer science or do science. Good, perfect, 100% credit. I am going to encourage you thinking and translating my words into yours anytime I can. And even if you feel like you did something on a test and I didn't give you credit for it, that's why we go over tests in class, so you can say, you know, Noams, let me tell you where I was coming from with that answer. I'll be totally open. I'll be totally open to say, let me chew on that for a little bit, and I'll probably end up giving you some points because I want to encourage you guys thinking more, memorizing less. So then we get down here and we see you had just had observe. Well, this is where you squeeze in the stuff we did in class. Okay? Now, you would look back over here, and I know this probably happened for some of you, okay? In class, I only wrote the word senses because I'm talking blah, 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 and I said, you know what, use your senses. Maybe I said sight, vision here. Okay, what if I put senses, and for whatever reason, when you're doing the Mary Notes, it's only a day later, and you're like, I really don't remember. What the hell does senses mean? What would you do if all of a sudden you're like, I can't remember why I wrote that, because really maybe you got distracted, you looked up and you saw, oh, there's a word on the board. I'll write it down, because, I mean, it's kind of where a lot of entering ninth grade students are, is they're really good at writing down what they see as opposed to thinking about it, okay? Now, the next thing is you've got to stop doing that and say, what does that mean? But you're going to inevitably have that happen a time or two. So what would you do? Contact a fellow student. Hey, I got this word senses underneath observe. What does that mean? I can't remember. If you can't find someone in class, text me. Email me. I'll answer. Now, many classes over the years have decided they're smarter when they work together. So they've created text chains. They've created Facebook groups back in the day when Facebook was something the kids used before a bunch of old farts got their hands on it. And they would constantly communicate with each other. I don't ask you to do that. I demand you do that. You guys create one that's called biology class, okay? Or however you want to do it. And then just say, hey, what does senses mean here? What does that mean? And then people answer each other, help each other out. The more you answer somebody, the more that likely they're going to be jumping in and helping you out. That means when you're doing a worksheet and you're like looking at a question, you're like, honestly, I don't really understand what the question's even asking. Ask a classmate. If you, for some reason, don't have it in your notes, the idea is that you find a way to get it. I'm expecting you guys to help each other on your homework. That doesn't mean who can give me answers 1 through 17 on the 18 questions for homework. No, clearly that would be cheating. But I definitely want you guys working with each other. So somebody get brave and say, hey, let's create something. I don't care what device you use. If you want to use Snapchat, which I think would be ridiculous, but hey, whatever. Find a way that you guys would all communicate and say, here's a good way, here's a good way. Okay. So once you've done the Mary Notes, we continue on. We do a lab in class. We maybe take some more notes, etc. At the end of a section, you do a worksheet. And the worksheet should be done with the notes open. It's another chance to see, are my Mary notes as good as I hope they are? because I'm not finding a couple of these answers. Did he ask them in class? Did he say them in class? They should be in your married notes. You should stop thinking about looking over here now. You should be thinking about looking over here. But you're not perfect. You're just learning this skill. And even in months from now, you're going to be like, yeah, I didn't quite get there yet. That's why we have the last assignment for a section called processing the notes. This is where you take a check on all of the quizzes you've read, the worksheets you've done, on the different notes you have, and say, do I have it all here? How do I make it even better? How do I get how to do science to something even more like my language, you know? And so we got Charlie. He's like, you know what? I'm just thinking about it. It's like doing science, because that's how Charlie talks. He's like, I'm just doing stuff. So I'm just doing science, Mr. Nooms. That's it. If Charlie wrote on a test, when I ask what is science or what is the scientific method, you're like, it's doing science. I'm going to give you credit because it's your language. I want you to say, now, if you actually use words that don't make sense, which you won't get you to say scientific method, it's the stuff with the stuff, man. It's the stuff with the stuff. Give me credit. No. So as long as it makes some sense, we're good. Okay, steps, observe. We're using this, and you decide, you know what, I screwed myself up by just putting senses down. If I say use senses, I think, well, my senses. Or use my senses, if you need that. I know some of you need sentence structure to really develop the idea, and abbreviating is not helping. Still make it your own words, and you can put in using my senses, and you could put in there sight as an example, and you go like, oh yeah, I look at it. What color is it? Okay, is it bubbling? All right, measure. I know what you mean measure. You measure the tape measure. That's a tool. You know, I don't have to have the word tool. Okay, so that's you refining and refining and refining. You progressing through these 4 steps are how you make your brain go, I really understand this. I really get what you mean when you're talking about this. It kind of makes sense to me. And you get yourself away from the scientific method is how the way, because back to this, if this is how you study, I'm going to cover up the definition and say the word, or you have a note card and you're looking at scientific method on one side and the answer's on the back, and you're like, it's how? No. It's when, no. It's a way. What is it? Yes, it's a way, blah, blah. This is what I know. This is what I was taught. This is my degree in neurobiology. You just created a memory of scientific method is when, blah, blah, blah. And that's not true. You just created a false fact, okay? Your brain now gets to this road and says scientific method. Where is the answer? Where's the definition? And instead of reinforcing, it's a way to do science. It's a way to do science. It's a way to do science. You now have a way, a how, a when, a where, and you're like, you're sitting there in the middle of a test going, the tip of my dang tongue, I can't remember it. Because you think covering notes up and trying to guess at what they say is studying, that is not studying. It has been proven in experiments that unstudies you when you screw up the words. Looking at your notes, rewriting your notes. Look at how many times I'm telling you to write something. Using more parts of your brain. Sitting there and processing these notes. And then studying should be, I'm going to rewrite these notes again. I'm going to make these process notes even neater, even bigger, even tabbed better, etc. Look at the tabbing. I'm putting so much effort in, okay? These aren't so tabbed so well. I expected them not to be. That's why I didn't do such tabbing. But look at the tabbing I'm trying to maximize in my tiny little pages I created, okay? This is the process.